Alright, third installment in the Efilist channel videos, and I want to kind of focus on the pain-pleasure principle. What our brain is doing, even the two sides of it, the Freudian superego versus whatever, regular ego, the desire versus the thinking machine, but more importantly in the concept of how we are directed, why these things exist, because of this concept of attraction and repulsion. And that's the underlying necessary part of our animation. And once you're animated, there's this choice to move in directions that are good for your health and directions that are bad for your health. That's the way it works. And so you're going to acquire mechanisms that are going to make you better in terms of deciding what direction to take. And that's just another part of evolution, and that's what basically our whole psychology is built out of. And so I want to focus on that, but the point of these videos is to do the summary thing. So let's first start with the Big Bang. It's important. I'll add extra here, don't worry. It won't be completely redundant. So whatever, there's something now instead of nothing. Matter shoots out a bunch of tiny particles, automatically starts coalescing, gravity starts pulling things together, suns form, they start blowing the fuck up. Excuse me, didn't mean to swear, sorry. They start blowing the heck up, and all kinds of heavier elements start shooting out of those. They coalesce, the chemistry starts getting denser in the elementary form. Like you get metals like lead and gold and other heavy molecules of structure, of complexity, but nothing dramatic. Yeah, wet. Alright, sorry, I have to think about what I'm doing. It's not as bad as yesterday, but it's still, still almost knee high, and yesterday it was almost waist high. Yeah, that was pretty easy compared to yesterday. But anyway, where was I? All right, yeah. So the chemistry is getting heavier, but the key thing, which I thought of, is that what happens with this biology thing? So you get this salty sea or whatever it was, this ammonia atmosphere or whatever. It doesn't matter. And life formed. Okay, the first DNA molecule combined with a cellular membrane, and we're off to the races with the DNA molecule. And all of this is related to one single DNA molecule about 4 billion years ago. Everything on this planet that we call alive has relation to that one molecule of DNA. And the secret of that molecule was, the thing that made it happen really, is that what it's doing is controlling not elementary chemistry in the sense of it's not necessarily making chemistry, but it's controlling the arrangement of chemicals. So it's taking the pieces of the rock and the dirt and the sand, and it's constructing little animated machines out of it. Over time they became animated, became us, over a billion years of evolution. From simple cells. And, once it got to that, more complex form where it could start create tools like movement, like sensation, maybe 500 million, 600 million years of sentient life. But the game is the arrangement. It's arranging chemistry. That's what a DNA molecule is basically orchestrating. It's constructing it one element at a time, one molecule at a time, essentially. It's builds you slowly but surely through this mechanical blueprint reading process, this mechanical reading of an arrangement of chemistry. So ironically, it's an arrangement of chemistry in the form of a DNA molecule with trillions of nodes, let's say, of bits of information, and that chemical arrangement arranges new chemistry by being read by another piece of chemistry. And that's the game. But it's just arrangement. It's just an order of A, B, C, D instead of A, random, F, random this, random that. It's an ordered arrangement. And that's what makes us function. Alright, so anyway, let's get to the repulsion and attraction thing now. Because that's the game here. That deer, all this stuff. It's all about getting to the energy source that will allow the DNA molecule that is the core of the living beast to perpetuate itself. And the necessary component of perpetuation is to acquire resources to create the copy. And most organisms in the past had to create essentially resources maybe almost equal to themselves. They had to gain enough size where they could afford to split off in a half, split in half and give away half of their resources to create the new life. Now organisms can do it much more sneakily by creating built-in little eggs or some other mechanism where they just throw enough food resource to continue the building process, but the new organism will be a tiny fraction of the size of the full-grown organism and will have to eke out an existence first before it can even start to do the reproducing. But it's just a different percentage in terms of a split. The bottom line is you must consume resources to be able to successfully reproduce. Either your parent has to acquire them ahead of time to create a full size, ready to reproduce offspring, or if you're going to be born in some immature fashion like a maggot, you're going to have to consume before you'll be able to reproduce, to create the little energy eggs that'll be capable of consuming again. But that's the game. So anyway, the point is we need this attractive force to get to the food, and we need this repulsive force to stay away from being food, to keep ourselves from getting harmed or doing something that will disable our capacity to reproduce by disabling our capacity to do the necessary consumption. And we do it in this highly competitive environment. All these plants are competing with each other. All have a DNA slightly different, slightly unique. And they're all right now in a heated competition for whose DNA is going to get into the future. Unfortunately, because of the deer, the only plants you see here are Japanese barberry, because that's all they'll let compete, as the deers take out all the other competitors. Yes, but that's the game. And so then pain and pleasure came along as a one of these things that evolves, one of these little changes that takes place, a slight change in the dynamic, where now the thing will reach out for the sun. Well, all of a sudden a mutation is created and an organism goes, ow. Yeah, and the ow became useful because the ow gave it real motivation to avoid something negative, something destructive to its existence. And then eventually these organisms acquired the capacity to remember these ows, to remember that it's no good. When you do something, you get owed, and you say, I ain't going to do that thing again. So if my brain remembers a pattern that's happened before, I'll be protected against falling into that trap. But it's all about just motivating you. I'll argue that the pain-pleasure principle is really just a pain principle. That fundamentally the illusion of pleasure is built out of creating a tense, agitated, deprivated, irritated organism, and creating the illusion of removal of those irritations, those, like my arm is tired right now, tension, irritation, so I'm tolerating it. But if it was suddenly to be relieved, it would be like a sneeze or some other event where I'd get a reboot, I'd get a freedom from an hindrance, a burden, and it would feel good because I'm being relieved of a deprivation, a wanting, a needing, a discomfort, an irritation, a slight unpleasantness. And when you add up a lot of slight unpleasantnesses and you relieve them all at once, you might have something called a climax, ooh, that was really good. And that's how the brain is rewarding you. That's how the structure of our evolution, the beasties that could do this more effectively survived. The ones that were highly motivated, more sensitive, more aggressive in their desire, more passionate, but at the same time, disciplined by fear and all these other different kinds of emotions. The right mix for the right environment, and you're here. Your ancestors made it, so you're here. This design worked for the competitive environment that existed. If the climate was a little different, we would have looked different. If certain comets and meteors never hit the Earth, we would look different. We'd probably be big, giant Tyrannosauruses. But anyway, it doesn't matter. That's the game. And our whole psychology is built out of that. The existence of our memory, the existence of our intelligence even, is manifested as a tool that augments repulsion and attraction, that adds enhancement to that functionality. And that's the only reason why it exists. That's its purpose, that's its function. And we've taken it this extra step because we acquired language and changed the dynamic, because now we can think outside of the DNA box, so to speak. DNA doesn't control us anymore. We control our reproduction. We control, through intelligence, understanding more than our desire, more than what we want. We understand that what we want has consequences. We can see much further into the future and realize that I can't win by killing somebody else because I understand their sentience. Just like if a lion had this understanding, it might starve to death because it might realize that thing that I'm going to eat is just as alive as I am. It's just as sensitive as I am. I can't win if I steal harm, if I take harm, if I impose harm on it. It's no better than me being harmed. So how is there any gain? There's only a net loss in that equation. And we can do that now. We can think better than our biology. We can step above our biology because we have 10,000 years of acquired knowledge of how this mechanical system works. And unfortunately, the sad truth is, when we analyze this mechanical system, including our own psychology, we can see it's not doing anything but replicating a DNA molecule. And not for any good reason, and not in any good arena. We are senselessly competing against each other. We are cannibalizing each other. So we're back to consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, and addiction. We're motivated by a contrived sense of attraction, by a desire to satisfy our ego, to satisfy deprivations in our sense of self-worth, because we will be accomplished, we will succeed, we will do something else to pat ourselves on the back if we achieve the standard we have established inside of our psychology. We will gain reward for that. And we're just being manipulated to keep marching, to keep hitting the spokes in the little round wheel in the little hamster cage. We're being duped and manipulated by a DNA molecule, and we're smart enough to demand better than that. We're smart enough to allow our intelligence, to oblige our intelligence to come up with a better reason to remain here. Oh, enough of a video. Wind. Good time for stopping. Until next time and such.